This film told the story of a man who could see 2 minutes of his future. This situation, of course, allowed him to change his destiny. However, he has to deal with big problems because of his ability. A man named Chris Johnson sitting in a cafe. Chris kept looking at his watch as if waiting for someone to arrive, but the person he was waiting for never came. Why Chris was waiting was unknown, but we would find out later. Chris was a magician who often performed in a cafe in Las Vegas and always succeeded in his act. It was because Chris had a unique ability to see his future for 2 minutes ahead. His magic skills attracted the attention of a police intelligence chief named Callie. He had been watching Chris for a long time and suspected that Chris had a unique ability. Being a magician did not mean having a big paycheck, so he often gambled in casinos to earn extra money. Chris used his power to win bets. However, sometimes he would deliberately lose to avoid being suspected. Nevertheless, the management, watching him for a long time, became suspicious because Chris was winning more than he was losing. They suspected Chris of cheating. Especially when they were watching him on CCTV, Chris looked at them as if he knew they were talking about him. The casino then sent an officer to his table to conduct an inspection. Still, before that could happen, Chris finished his game. Then, a man appeared at the change counter with a gun and shot the cashier and the clerk. It turned out to be the incident he had seen 2 minutes earlier, so before it happened, Chris stopped the game. Unfortunately, the clerk thought Chris was trying to commit a robbery, so security guards chased him. However, thanks to his vision, Chris could easily evade the officer's pursuit, so Chris's ability was not just the ability to see, but he could change what would happen to him in the future. Outside, Chris stole a car to escape. The security guards immediately reported it to the police, and long story short, there was a chase between them. Chris then used his ability to see the events of the next 2 minutes. Then, he simulated them with his current state. Chris managed to outwit the officers chasing him with the right timing and precision. The news of the car theft was heard by Callie Ferris, the head of intelligence, who paid attention to Chris. Then, he met the head of casino security, Roy Ball. Roy Ball insisted that he didn't know Chris, but he suspected that Chris had cheated and attacked a man in the casino. Callie told him that the man who had been attacked was a wanted criminal. One thing that struck him was that before he left the table, he turned his head towards the CCTV camera, as if Chris knew that security would be coming for him. But that was not his purpose here. It was not yet known what the reason for Callie's pursuit of Chris was, but based on his research, Callie concluded that Chris would be able to see for some time. Sooner or later, the police would find him here. But Chris had a reason for staying in town. In his visions, he would meet a woman with whom he could see the future. She would visit a cafe between 8 and 9 a.m., but Chris didn't know precisely when she would show up. So all he could do was wait there, so he could only stay there every morning between 8 and 9. A moment later, Callie managed to find her, but she told Chris not to panic. He had come to this place because of the car theft and a bigger problem. There was a group of terrorists who were stealing nuclear explosives and hiding somewhere in this town. Callie asked if Chris could see the future, realizing that he had seen his magic show several times, and asked for his help in finding the nuclear bomb, as the safety of millions of lives is at stake. Chris immediately denied having this ability. Then, Callie reminded Chris that he was going to jail for stealing a car and assaulting someone in a casino. Then Chris said that the man had a gun and was trying to guess who it was, so he had to stop him. Without realizing it, his words became proof that Chris did have the ability to see, and it turned out that the conversation was just a simulation that Chris did 2 minutes into the future. Chris just wanted to know what the police wanted, to the point that NSA agents were chasing him. Not wanting to get involved in dangerous things, Chris decided to leave the house, and a moment later, Callie came to meet the old man and asked if Chris had just retired, as if he already knew. While elsewhere, 2 mobsters met Roy Ball, and they forced him to tell them who Chris Johnson was. Roy Ball said he didn't recognize him. It was just that there were NSA agents after him because they thought he could stop a big case. The following day, Chris returned to the cafe where he had been waiting for the mysterious woman, and this time, the woman did appear. Chris watched her quietly and then offered to accompany her. However, the woman immediately refused, and it turned out that Chris was doing a simulation. Then Chris tried to repeat the simulation, and the result was that after a dozen attempts, the woman rejected him a dozen times. Then, her former lover suddenly appeared and asked her to return. Although the woman refused, the man forced Chris to try to break it off, but instead, he was hit. The woman became upset and asked the waiter to call security. The man reluctantly left. Feeling bad, the woman helped Chris and introduced herself as Liz. Chris then pretended that he was on his way to the town of Flagstaff in Arizona, but someone had stolen his car, and Liz happened to be on her way there and offered to give him a lift. Then Chris said, Isn't it amazing how you meet in a cafe by chance and then go to the same town? They might have been destined to meet, but Liz didn't like coincidences. There was no point in knowing what would happen. Life was supposed to be full of surprises. Elsewhere, Callie went to the cafe where Chris was. Earlier, they had managed to track him on the CCTV. The cafe waitress had seen him leave with a woman, and she had heard that they were going to Flagstaff City. Callie ordered them to monitor every CCTV to find the vehicle they were using. Then she was told that Roybal had been murdered last night. His throat was slit, and the killers might have been looking for the same information about Chris Johnson's whereabouts. Meanwhile, the nuclear thieving terrorists have heard that the NSA was looking for someone they believe could foil their plans to detonate the nukes. They decide to hunt Chris down and kill him. When they arrived at Flagstaff, Liz told them she was a teacher. It happened to be the birthday of one of her students, and she didn't want to miss it. One student asked if Chris was her boyfriend because he kept looking at her. Then Chris did a magic trick and gave the pupil a present. Later that night, on their way home, they had to stop at a motel because of an accident on the road they were traveling. Liz did not expect the brief encounter to lead to a deeper relationship. Chris said he had been waiting for her for a long time and would not miss it this time. But unbeknownst to them, the time had traced their whereabouts through traffic cameras. At the same time, the head of the NSA announced an emergency. Their satellites had detected the presence of nuclear weapons in the area from California to San Diego. Without wasting any time, Callie demanded that they find Chris immediately to help locate the bomb. The terrorists were secretly monitoring the NSA's movements. They would follow them because their goal was to capture Chris Johnson. The following day, the NSA connected the motel where Chris was staying, and Callie saw Liz leaving alone. They waited for 2 minutes before Callie finally caught Liz. Callie tells her that Chris can see the future, but is a dangerous psychopath. Callie asked Liz to cooperate by putting sleeping pills in her drink and waiting for the police to arrest Chris. Arriving at the motel, Liz pretended to offer him food and drink, which had been drugged beforehand. After Chris drank it, Liz apologized that she had deliberately set him up on the NSA's orders because the police had told her that he had visions. Chris then blamed the TV as loudly as he could because he suspected that Liz had a listening device, and he didn't want their conversation to be overheard by the NSA agents. Then Chris admits that he can see the future, and the NSA agent wants Chris to find the terrorists' nuclear bomb. But his vision is only limited to 2 minutes into the future, and even then, only if it concerns him. It's not that he doesn't want to help the FBI, it was just that his abilities were limited. But everything changed when Chris saw another future with Liz, and the NSA agent did not realize this. After that, he wrote a message to Liz and asked her to do it after he left the motel. Chris promised that he would look for her if anything happened to her, no matter how many weeks or months it took. Once outside, Chris paused momentarily and then ran off, with Callie chasing after him. The written message seemed to ask Liz to destroy the water tower near the motel and then hit the piece of wood. Chris continued running down the hill, and the terrorists who were chasing him fired. Still, Chris managed to dodge because he had predicted it, and just below the mountain, where Callie was waiting for him, Chris rescued Callie from the rubble. Meanwhile, Liz, who was running alone, was taken hostage by the terrorists. After arriving at the police station, Callie repeatedly asked Chris for help locating the explosion. Chris tried to look ahead through the news on TV and saw Liz being held hostage by terrorists in a car park. They intend to detonate a bomb in the area. The bomb squad was dispatched, but soon the bomb exploded, killing Liz. Chris asked Callie to let him go. Chris then flew to the place where Liz was being held hostage, but nothing happened until they got there. After a while, Callie caught up with him and told him that the police had discovered the identity of the terrorists. They had found the body of a woman, allegedly killed by the terrorists. The wounds on the body were similar to those on Roybal. There was a possibility that the killers were the same people. They deliberately used Liz as bait to catch him. If Chris wanted to cooperate, he planned to stop the terrorists. Callie then asked the NSA to turn off all cell phones in a 2-mile radius, and then asked Chris to show up and let the terrorists shoot him. Having guessed this, the terrorists made a phone call, but unfortunately, all the signals in the area had been turned off. It wasn't long before the FBI agents spotted his position and opened fire. The earlier shot at Chris was a miss, as Chris already knew the direction of the image. Callie said the terrorist didn't know he was here yet, so he should try to look further ahead. Chris then spotted a van and took down the number plate. Callie immediately ordered his men to rush out and find the van. When it was found, a shootout ensued between the NSA and the terrorists. Unfortunately, the terrorists managed to escape and hide in a large ship. One by one, the terrorists were taken down. Chris and Callie Liz were held hostage in the engine room, and once again, Chris used his ability to avoid gunfire. But the real problem was not yet over. NSA had still not found where the nuclear bomb was to be detonated. Callie pointed out where the bomb might be, but when Chris lit up, he said he had made a mistake. Then, there was a massive explosion that destroyed a city. And it turned out that the events we had just seen were just a vision simulation by Chris. He is still in the motel with Liz, where all the events have not yet happened. Chris then contacted Callie and said he would work with her to help him find the atomic bomb. Still, on the condition that they guarantee Liz's safety. Chris then told Liz that he had something important to do. He promised that if anything happened to her, no matter how many weeks or months it took, he would return and look for her. And finally, the film was over. As we know, when Chris was with Liz, his vision became increasingly distant. It might have been because Liz is a person who does not believe in coincidences. With this ability, Chris used it to do repeated experiments to find the best scenario of what he should do to save everyone who finally has no choice but to help Callie find where the terrorists would detonate the nuclear bomb. So, what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.